Hello there folks, it is Toby from TIJ Music and welcome to a review of the Queen album that is undoubtedly, according to the majority of fans and to me, the best Queen album that has ever been produced, and that is this, A Night at the Opera. I luckily enough own the original vinyl. This was my dad's original vinyl record that he had at the time. He's kept all the Queen collection up from the first album, which I've actually got there, but I'm sure you're not bothered about seeing that. Up to, I think, A Kind of Magic in '86. He's got all those albums. That includes the likes of Live Killers, even Flash Gordon. And I'm really glad he kept these. But unfortunately, a lot of his vinyl collection is now gone. But the Queen stuff has remained. And what is there really to say about this album? A lot. It's an absolutely fantastic album, starting with the album cover. Now, I did do a review of News of the World about 2 months back. You can go and watch that after this video. And that had awesome album art, and again, this does, as does A Day at the Race. Now, we'll get this just to compare the two. Now, they both have the album art with the Queen logo, as you can see. A little bit of a variation from A Night at the Opera to A Day at the Race. A Day at the Race being the album that came out second, of course, both Marx Brothers films. I know you can't see my mouth, so that looks a bit weird. But oh well. Yeah, they all feature the Queen logo, and it's incredible artwork. It is really nice artwork, a real big step from the likes of Sheer Heart Attack. But to be fair, even the early albums had good album artwork. But let's talk about the background of the album before getting into the tracks. Now, the album was, at the time, only reportedly, but it was reportedly the most expensive album to produce, ever, if you like, at that time. Of course, there have been albums that have gone over that now. And the album was recorded at various studios between 4 months in 1975. Now, this album, particularly the first track on this record, Death on Two Legs, is a little bit a result of their previous manager, Norman Sheffield. Now, as a result of management issues, as quoted on Wikipedia, Queen hardly received any sort of money or revenue from their previous 3 albums. The band didn't. Of course, there was plenty of revenue that came, but the band didn't get any of that revenue whittled down to them. And basically, they ended their contract with Trident Studios, so this was the first that came out with their new producer, which was, Roy Thomas Baker produced all their albums, the first 4 anyway, so all the albums up to yet, and after that produced Jazz with them. But they went over to EMI and they produced this album with that record label, and from them on I believe they used them pretty much throughout. But interesting stuff, that it was a really complex production. Queen were under massive pressure at this point to produce a big hit album because ultimately they got no money. Like a lot of these bands did, even though they produced 3 brilliant albums in Queen, Queen 2 and Sheer Heart Attack, they hadn't got any money and they needed a big box office album, and this definitely delivered. They used a diverse choice of instruments. All the songs are diverse. We're going to come to that on a little bit later. And it is really just a diverse album that, as Brian May quotes, he said that each of us individually wants to realise, and apologies, I am just checking my notes on the right hand side. So each of us individually wants to realise our potential as writers and producers, and that's exactly what all 4 of them did with contributions they all made to this fantastic album. Now, it topped the UK album charts on 4 non-consecutive weeks and went to number 4 in the US Billboard charts. And the worldwide sales for this album, I don't know how that's split along this, vinyl, CD, whatever other format you want to use these days. 6 million records this sold, which is absolutely awesome, really. Only 300,000 in the UK, 1.3 million in the US, but this is certainly one of the better albums to own, and has got plenty of accolades. It's on the 1001 albums to hear before you die list. It came number 6 in a classic rock poll of 50 best rock albums of all time. Came number 9 in a BBC poll of the top 100 albums. I think you can see the sort of pedigree that this album has got. And the album, put my teeth back in, received good reviews on release. Although, interesting, no previews were sent to the media because the band was so interested in perfection with this record that they were remixing it right till the last minute. So there was no previews that the media got, as they usually would do, to put out an early review, even though this is 44 years late. But anyway, I was supposed to gloss over that. But from the snippets that journalists and reviewers heard, they really liked it. And one particular review I wants to point out from Ray Fox Cumming, who's a journalist, and he described his first impressions, and similar to me, as an amazing rush of music with one track running helter-skelter into the next. The album's got 3 highlights: Death on Two Legs, The Prophet Song and Bohemian Rhapsody, and only one bad track, A Sweet Lady. It's faster, flashier and more complex than Sheer Heart Attack, but they haven't gone over the top. And that is absolutely bang on with this album. It's just perfect. It is just perfection. I look at all these songs and I think, wow, they need to deliver a hit album. Oh, they did. This really propelled Queen to stardom. 2 singles on this album, You're My Best Friend and Bohemian Rhapsody. You're My Best Friend, I think, only went... Where did You're My Best Friend go? It went to number 7 in the UK, and of course Bohemian Rhapsody was the second single from this album. I don't need to tell you how well that's done. It's probably, and I don't say this lightly, probably the most popular song, not in terms of favourite, but the most popular song, as in most popular heard song on the planet. It is one that it's incredible, and is one, of course, that is completely synonymous with Queen, and is one of the highlights of this brilliant album. But that's all the background stuff done, so let's finally get into the tracks. Now, there are 12 tracks on this record. We have 2 sides on the record, as usual, and inside the record we have the lyrics for all of them. I'll just try and get that nice and close to the camera. So that's the first side. I believe that's up to, yeah, it's up to Seaside Rendezvous, it looks like there. And then we've got the stuff from the second side on that bit. And then we have the record, which, I didn't actually show you this, which is like at the bottom. If I've got this in, oh, it's a bit too high. It's tricky not being able to see what's on camera. But if you just look at the bottom of the screen there, it's all the people who produced the album. So you've got the guys, and it'll say where I'm pointing there, no sympathise, which is quite a funny bit. And of course, pictures of all the members of the band. So inside the record, we have the inner sleeve, which I will just show you now. Some nice pictures, I'm guessing, from the previous tour. That looks all nice to me. Yeah, and one big picture on the back, which is great. And then we have, of course, the record itself, fantastic record itself. There's side 1, starting with Death on Two Legs and finishing off with Seaside Rendezvous, both written by Mercury. And then the second side, which starts with the Prophet song and ends off with a great rendition of God Save the Queen. So that's the record, that's everything physical sorted out. So let's talk now about the record itself. As I've said in the introduction, I'm sure you don't need to describe this even further, but it's a fantastic record. It really is. Death on Two Legs, it's a brilliant song. It starts off with, I've given that a rating of 9 out of 10. It's a hate speech almost towards Queen's previous producer. Now, I did talk about this a little bit earlier about Norman Sheffield, their previous producer, who basically treating them in the wrong way. Now, he said in his autobiography, Norman's no longer with us, but he did say in his autobiography that none of that ever happened, but the band seemed to think so. And there are some really aggressive lyrics. I'll just give you some example here. Do you feel like suicide? I think you should. Is your conscience alright? Does it plague you at night? A dog with disease, part of the sleaze. Was your fin on your back part of the deal? Insane should be put inside you. A sewer rat decaying in a cesspool of pride. Should be made unemployed, then make yourself null and void. I mean, that's some pretty powerful stuff, and clearly directed towards Norman Sheffield. And there's a great classic albums documentary that's put out actually about this album. I've watched that, it's a brilliant documentary. And Brian May said that he was so taken aback by the lyrics, he thought, Jesus Christ, calm down a bit. But the aggressiveness really adds to the song. He did perform it in the end, but the aggressiveness really adds to the song. And the start of the track is fantastic. It really opens the album up so well with that sort of guitar playing, and then it all comes to a head with that scream. And then the piano, it's like, wow, this is brilliant. It's almost Floyd-esque, if you like, Pink Floyd-esque, with that tension building and the atmosphere building. It's absolutely fantastic. But for that track, it's a 9 out of 10. So we move on to the second track, which is by far the shortest on the album, particularly of all the album tracks before God Save the Queen. And that is Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon, the second track written by Freddie Mercury. And obviously clearly the shortest in his lyrics book. And a very interesting one, really. It's the real definition of short but sweet. It's highlights how Queen weren't afraid to be different. It's a very weird track for a rock band to be doing, but kind of looks at the norms of the 1920s, looking at bicycling on every Wednesday evening. Thursday I'll go waltzing to the zoo. Fridays I go painting in the Louvre. It's very bizarre, but it works. It really does work on this album, as does everything. I think if you had a lot of songs like Death on Two Legs, and then just Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon, you'd think, what the hell's going on here? But all the album, the different stuff that the different guys wrote for the album is so diverse that it's just fantastic, and that is an 8 out of 10. It's probably limited a little bit because of its length. It doesn't really allow itself to go to much depth, but it's an 8 out of 10 in terms of a song for me. And then we go into I'm in Love with My Car, which also receives an 8 out of 10 for me. Written by Roger Taylor, the first and only track on the album, written by Roger Taylor. And we all know, I don't know if you've seen the Bohemian Rhapsody film, but a lot of people have, that'll be watching this. And in the film, it was kind of made a big point of that Roger Taylor really wanted this to be the B-side of Bohemian Rhapsody. Brian May thought the track was even a joke to start off with, but Roger said, no, I really want to do this. And it was a bit of tension, but I don't think quite as much as the film portrayed it to be, with them, whacking stuff about it. But it's been a while to watch the film, but I remember there was a bit of drama going on there, and, well, Hollywood dramatisation, that's never happened before, had it? But a really interesting track. It's a real good rock track, and I think that it highlights, and Roger Taylor always has been, in Queen, the most rock enthusiast. I think the most hard rock enthusiast, with Brian May probably second in that list. And the track really highlights it. It's great, it's so diverse, and again, those first 3 tracks, you just think, what the hell? This is just so different to anything that, particularly at the time, I can guarantee people had heard. Then we go into You're My Best Friend, the only track bit written by John Deacon on the album. And I do like John Deacon's writing, actually. He does write Spread Your Wings for the News of the World album and a few other tracks. But I'd say You're My Best Friend is the most popular one that he wrote, the most known one that John Deacon wrote. And it's a brilliant track. It's the most popular track from the album mentioned so far, because it was the first of 2 singles. The second single, of course, was Bohemian Rhapsody. The B-side of You're My Best Friend was 39, which we'll mention in just a minute. And once again, it's completely different from the Roger Taylor track written before it. And you could look at this cynically and think it's 4 individuals, but it's not. It's 4 individuals building their own craft and their imagination to make an album that really reflects them as a band together, because it's not just Freddie Mercury who's writing, it's not just Brian, I don't need to mention all the names of the people in the band, but it's that brilliance of coming together with everyone writing at least one track and really harmonising, not particularly harmonising, but becoming creative and really gelling a fantastic album because of that. And I think that's what You're My Best Friend attempts to do. It went to number 7 in the UK. Really nice track. It's one that I've heard a lot of times, of course, because it's one that's been played as a single and one of the most popular Queen songs in the greatest hits numbers and numbers of times, but a really great track. And then we move into probably what is the most, probably maybe the second most actually, underrated track on the Night of the Opera album, and that is 39, written by Brian May. A lot of people confuse this one to be about the war because of the year 1939. In the year of 39, assembled here the volunteers in the day when lands were few. And it's a really nice song. It's more of an acoustic number, which is really nice. John Deacon plays double bass on this. Now, Brian May did ask him cheekily, any chance you can play the double bass? And but he didn't think anything of it. But 2 days, come back into the studio, and the bass player had learned the double bass within 2 days. Quite incredible, really. It's really an underrated Queen classic. It's one I've got into really recently. Bear in mind, I only listened to the whole album for the first time about 6 weeks ago. I'd listened to probably about 5 or 6 tracks off the album, but hadn't listened to it in full. And that's what you have to do with an album like A Night of the Opera. But believe me, since then, I've played it so many times. I know a lot of people say, well, you've got to play an album so many times to be able to review it. And trust me, I have, even if it is within a 6-7 week radius. But back to 39, it's such a nice track. It's an acoustic track about space voyagers who go on a journey. They think they've gone for a year. They come back 100 years later. And of course, everyone who they knew was either died or aged incredibly. And it's brilliant, really. It is a brilliant track. It's so different, and it highlights Brian May's brilliant writing. However, the next song, I said that's 9 out of 10 for that one. We're keeping up with the ratings, I don't know, but they'll all be shown on the screen at the end of the review. Then we go to something that doesn't exactly show Brian May's writing to be very good. But that's not a criticism of Brian May, it's just a criticism that doesn't fit on the album. And that's Sweet Lady. Now, the review I mentioned first off of Ray Fox Coming was about the one bad track, Sweet Lady. It's a really odd track. It feels a little bit too roots rock for me. Not much there. Fair enough, some people might like the song, but there's just a lack of production. There's just a lack of something in the song that makes it a little bit weird in the context of the album and really brings the overall rating down. I mean, this is only going to be given a 5 out of 10 because it's not a terrible track, but it just doesn't fit. I don't know what they were thinking there, genuinely, but that's the only criticism I'm going to have of A Night of the Opera album. But I'm interested in the comments to see what you think about Sweet Lady. And then we move to the end of side 1 with Seaside Rendezvous, a really, really weird one, written by Freddie Mercury. It's a song that when I first listened to it, I thought, oh my god, what the hell is this? This is proper weird stuff, poppy crap, basically. But I have got into it a lot more over the last few weeks. It's catchy, it's one that you just can't get away from. It definitely highlights the lack of fear that Freddie Mercury has to be so creative and imaginative and doesn't care what anybody thinks, even though this is supposed to be a rock album. And it's just great, the use of French at some point with C'est la vie. I'm going to sound like an idiot now, Treize, even though, to be fair, I did do French at GCSE, but oh well. But yeah, it's really good. It's a really good track. This is an 8 out of 10. And I do feel like it fits in really well because it's a night at the opera. For some reason, that album title opens up a lot of opportunities for me, and it certainly does cover a lot of bases, this album does, definitely. So that's an 8 out of 10. And then we go on to side 2. Wow, this starts incredibly with a track that I personally feel rivals... That doesn't make any sense. Drop the personally from that second sentence. A track that rivals Bohemian Rhapsody for the best Queen song, and that is the Prophet song, written by Brian May. Tremendous. Absolutely fantastic. 10 out of 10. The first 10 on this album. It's up there with Bohemian Rhapsody and the likes of March, the Black Queen. It is absolutely fantastic. It's incredible with its length and detail. And it was written about a dream that Brian May had about a great flood that had happened. And if I could put my teeth back in, he wrote this song when he was recovering from illness he had when they were recording Sheer Heart Attack. And blimey, I hope I get ill more often, because if I could write something like that when I'm ill, fantastic. But All Music in their review calls it mystical prog rock, and I can't disagree with that. And this sort of track, and I think I might do that at some stage, comparing the Prophet song compared to Bohemian Rhapsody, because for me it's not a ridiculous comparison to make. Some people are going, what the hell are you on about? Bohemian's in its own league. But the Prophet song, it goes from rock to slow ballad-like to, as it says, mystic prog rock. It's just incredible. And then we go to the second of 3 10 out of 10s on the album. No guesses what the third one's going to be. No prize for guessing what it's going to be. You can guess all you like, but you won't get any prizes for it. But the second 10 out of 10 is Love of My Life, one that, of course, has been massively popularised by the Bohemian Rhapsody film to the masses, and it is a fantastic track. It's got a lot more depth than the previous Mercury pen tracks, likes of Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon and Seaside Rendezvous, but it is absolutely fantastic. It was written about his love at the time, Mary Austin, of course, his ex-fiancée and best friend, Mary Austin, and it is possibly the best love song of all time. The harp played by Brian May really adds to the track, in my opinion, and again, it's a nice departure from the rock element of the album, and that's what the great thing about Queen is. They were willing to be different. They weren't down one genre. They weren't narrow-minded. We're a rock band. If you put Love of My Life on, I don't know, I can't even give it right. Let's say an AC/DC album, it looks ridiculous, but on a Queen album, it fits in just right, and it's an absolutely fantastic track. And then we move on to Good Company, which is the last track written by Brian May, and it's a decent track. It follows on a little bit more from Sweet Lady, to be honest. It's the second worst track on the album, which isn't a terrible accolade, really, considering what it's up against, but it's just hasn't really got as much as 39 and the Prophet song. Bear in mind, those get 9s and 10s. If you look at the spectrum, it's not far behind those tracks. And it's certainly a good track, but I don't know, it's not fantastic. I know that this track, I don't know if it was the track or whether it was the first ukulele that Brian May played as a George Formby ukulele, or a replica that he'd seen his dad play in the past. I can't remember if that was used on the track or whether it was just in his general thoughts. I think something he'd used previously. And that's the window open, and that's the hose going outside. I wonder why we could hear that so loud. But that's a 7 out of 10. It's a good track nonetheless. And then we move to the third 10 out of 10, Bohemian Rhapsody. There was a film about it, for God's sake, with the name. What can I say about it that hasn't been said? I don't even think it would be right for me to review that track, because it's absolutely fantastic. It's unbelievable. It just instills that real opera, opera. It really does. It encapsulates all that has to... It's a rock opera, basically. It's a fantastic rock opera. And if you haven't heard that track and you've been watching for 20 minutes, I don't know what you're doing. But then we end with God Save the Queen, which is a great way to end the album. I'm not going to give it a rating, though, but it's a great way to end the album. And you just think, wow, what an album that is. It's absolutely fantastic. And every time I listen to it, it is well worth the listen. I got that done quicker than I thought, actually. I thought it'd be about 25, 30 minutes. So, what have I given this album? So, we'll get all the tracks up now. And the verdict is that I have given this an 8.45 out of 10 as a result of the averages from the tracks that have been reviewed. It's let down a bit by Sweet Lady because it'd be 8.8 without that track, but it's a track on the album. It's got to be taken into consideration. I could maybe give it a 6 on a good day, but not really much higher than that. But I will be doing at some point reviews of the Day at the Race album you saw earlier, Queen 1, Queen 2, Sheer Heart Attack, Jazz perhaps. I'm a lot more interested in 70s Queen than 80s Queen. You'll probably know that from my other review, News of the World. But if you haven't watched that yet, make sure to go and watch that review after you click off this video. There's plenty of great reviews on my channel, in my opinion anyway. But there's plenty of album reviews, plenty of top 10s for you to go and indulge yourself into. Thank you very much for your company. A very good album, a privilege to review it. That's definitely one off the bucket list of YouTube reviews. Thank you very much for your company today. I've been CIJ Music, and until the next time, I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.